Ever catch yourself daydreaming about ditching the daily grind and living life on your own terms? Actually achieving that work-life balance everyone's always talking about.
It seems like everyone's either striving for it or wondering if it's too good to be true.
Today we're diving headfirst into a movement that's taken that desire and turned it into a financial strategy. The FIRE movement.
And it's certainly sparked quite the conversation, hasn't it?
Exactly. So we're digging into some excerpts from Wikipedia to understand what it's all about, particularly the sections on the background, history, and critiques of FIRE. Now, for those unfamiliar, FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early.
The goal is pretty self-explanatory.
But achieving it, that's where things get interesting.
Right. To put it simply, it boils down to maximizing the gap between how much you earn and how much you spend. Because that surplus,
It's like putting your money to work so you don't have to.
that's your ticket to aggressive investments and, theoretically, a faster track to financial freedom.
But financial independence, retire early, has a certain ring to it, right? Makes you think of beaches and sleeping in. But we're talking of a complete overhaul of your relationship with money.
It's a pretty stark contrast to the typical work until you're 65 mentality, and that's precisely why it's resonated with so many. The FIRE movement challenges conventional wisdom. It encourages people to examine their spending habits, redefine their priorities, and really analyze their relationship with work.
It's funny you should mention work until you're 65 because the Wikipedia article cited a quote from J.L. Collins, often dubbed the godfather of financial independence. He said, "Spend less than you earn, invest the surplus, avoid debt. Do simply this and you'll wind up rich." I mean, he makes it sound so straightforward, doesn't he?
On the surface, it does seem simple, but the reality is putting those words into practice requires a level of discipline and dedication that many find challenging. We live in a society that often encourages instant gratification and FIRE. Well, it's the antithesis of that. It's about delaying gratification, sometimes significantly, for long-term financial freedom.
Absolutely. You're essentially making a conscious decision today to prioritize your future self, which can be tough, especially in a world filled with tempting distractions and societal pressures to, keep up with the Joneses. Speaking of which, there are different levels to this FIRE thing, right? It's not just one path, but several, each with its own set of principles and goals.
Exactly. The beauty of FIRE is that it can be customized to fit individual goals and risk tolerances. For example, Lean Fire is all about embracing frugality to the extreme. It's about achieving financial independence on a smaller budget, which often means living a more minimalist lifestyle.
So if someone is comfortable living on less and prioritizing experiences over material possessions, Lean Fire might be a good fit.
Precisely. Then on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's Fat Fire. As the name might suggest, it's geared toward those who desire a more luxurious retirement lifestyle, filled with travel and maybe even a vacation home or two.
Sounds like Fat Fire requires a significantly larger nest egg and a higher risk tolerance, right?
Absolutely. And for those who don't necessarily want to retire early, but simply want the flexibility to downshift their careers or take extended breaks, there's Coast Fire. This approach is fascinating because it involves reaching a point where your investments generate enough passive income to cover your living expenses.
Hold on. Passive income. For those who might not be familiar with the term, could you break that down for us?
Of course. Passive income refers to money you earn from assets you've invested in, essentially money you make without actively working for it. Think rental income, dividends from stocks, or even royalties from a book you've written.
Ah, okay. So with Coast Fire, you're aiming to reach a point where your investments are doing the heavy lifting, allowing you to either work less or pursue passions that may not be as lucrative.
You've got it. And finally, we have Barista Fire. It shares similarities with Coast Fire in that it involves transitioning to a less demanding job, but the key difference here is the timeline.
Let me guess, this doesn't actually involve becoming a barista, right?
Not necessarily, though there's nothing wrong with a good latte or two. But you're right, it's not about the coffee. Barista Fire is about finding part-time work to cover your expenses while your investments continue to grow, allowing you to reach full financial independence later on. It's like a stepping stone, bridging the gap between your current career and full retirement.
Okay, so we have Lean Fire for the minimalist, Fat Fire for those seeking a more lavish retirement, Coast Fire for those who want to downshift their careers, and Barista Fire for those seeking a gradual transition. It seems like there's a fire path for every personality and financial goal, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The key is finding the path that aligns with your values, your risk tolerance, and your vision for the future.
It's like choosing your own financial adventure, one that hopefully leads to greater freedom and control over your time.
It really is about finding that sweet spot between your aspirations and your lifestyle choices. Now, you might be thinking, okay, all this sounds great, but how long does it actually take to reach FIRE? And that's where things get really interesting. It all boils down to your savings rate.
The Wikipedia article touched on this, and to be honest, seeing the numbers laid out like that was a bit of an eye-opener.
It's one thing to talk about saving aggressively, but seeing how drastically different savings rates impact the timeline to financial independence, that's what really drives the point home.
It really highlights the power of compounding, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like even small increases in your savings rate can shave years off your journey to FIRE.
Precisely. The more you're able to save and invest, the faster your money can grow exponentially. Of course, this often means making some significant lifestyle changes, which is why many FIRE enthusiasts advocate for saving a large portion of their income. I believe the article mentions some even aim for 50% or more.
50%. Wow, that takes serious dedication. I can see why those in the FIRE community often embrace minimalism and prioritize experiences over material possessions. It's about aligning your spending with your values, right?
Absolutely. It's about being mindful of where your money is going and making conscious choices about what truly brings you joy and fulfillment.
It's like that old saying, it's not about how much money you make, but how much money you keep. Though in the case of FIRE, it seems like it's about how much you make, how much you keep, and how quickly you can put it to work for you.
You've got it. Now, while aggressive saving is a cornerstone of FIRE, it's not a magic wand that instantly grants financial freedom. Even with a high savings rate, it's important to maintain a realistic outlook.
So this isn't a get-rich-quick scheme, but rather a long-term commitment to a different way of living.
Precisely, and I think Justin McCurry, in that CNN article we pulled, articulated it perfectly when he said that even with an aggressive saving strategy, FIRE is likely a journey of a decade or two for most.
He's right. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But I'm starting to see the appeal of a gradual approach, especially after learning about the different FIRE pathways.
Okay.
It's less about rushing to an arbitrary finish line and more about taking control of your finances to design a life that aligns with your own definition of success. Speaking of which, we've talked a lot about the how of FIRE, but I'm curious about the when and why. Where did this whole movement even originate?
That's a question I often get asked. You might be surprised to learn that the seeds of the FIRE movement were sown quite a while ago, all the way back in 1992, with a book called Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez.
Wow, 1992. I guess the desire to escape the rat race and achieve financial independence is nothing new.
Absolutely not. And that book, with its emphasis on simple living and financial awareness, really laid the groundwork for the FIRE movement as we know it today.
It's amazing how a book published over 3 decades ago can still hold such relevance today. So, Your Money or Your Life planted the seed, but what were some of the key milestones that propelled FIRE into the mainstream?
Well, a pivotal moment came in 2010 with the publication of Jacob Lund Fisker's book, Early Retirement Extreme. This book took the core principles of frugality and financial independence and applied them to the concept of retiring early.
So Fisker's book took the FIRE movement a step further by introducing the idea of early retirement as an attainable goal.
Precisely. And then, as with many cultural movements, the internet played a crucial role in amplifying its reach. Blogs and online forums became virtual gathering places for individuals to share tips, strategies, and of course, their own FIRE journeys.
Ah, yes, the power of online communities. There's something incredibly inspiring about connecting with like-minded individuals who are striving for similar goals.
It's about finding that sense of belonging, that shared understanding, especially when pursuing a path that might be considered unconventional. And in the case of FIRE, one blog in particular played a pivotal role in propelling the movement into the spotlight. Mr. Money Mustache.
Mr. Money Mustache, I've heard that name before, though I have to admit I'm not entirely familiar with his story.
Well, Peter Adeney, the man behind the Mr. Money Mustache persona, started his blog in 2011, and it quickly gained a cult following. He shared his own journey to early retirement, documenting his frugal lifestyle and investment strategies in a way that was relatable and engaging.
So he wasn't just preaching the FIRE gospel, he was living it, and people were drawn to his authenticity.
Exactly. And it wasn't just Adeney. Other influential figures, like Grant Sabatier, author of Financial Freedom, emerged, sharing their unique perspectives and strategies for achieving financial independence.
It's incredible how these individuals, armed with little more than laptops and a passion for financial literacy, sparked a movement that has resonated with millions.
And by 2018, the FIRE movement had reached a tipping point. Mainstream media outlets were picking up on the trend, featuring stories of early retirees and sparking conversations about work, wealth, and what it truly means to live a fulfilling life.
It's amazing how quickly things can change when an idea gains momentum. But with all this buzz and excitement surrounding FIRE, it's only natural to wonder if it's truly attainable for everyone or if it's just a pipe dream for the privileged few. The Wikipedia article did touch on some criticisms, and honestly, some of them resonated with me. Like, is it really possible to achieve FIRE if you're not already starting out with a significant income?
Yeah, it's a valid concern, and it speaks to a larger issue of financial inequality.
Right.
Advocates for this perspective argue that the FIRE movement's heavy emphasis on saving a significant chunk of your income can feel out of touch for those who are already struggling to make ends meet.
It's like telling someone who's running a marathon to simply run faster without acknowledging the uneven terrain they might be navigating.
Exactly. And it also doesn't help that many prominent figures in the FIRE movement, those who've successfully achieved early retirement, often come from backgrounds of higher paying jobs. Their journeys, while inspiring, can sometimes feel out of reach for those in lower income brackets.
Yeah, it's that whole easier said than done thing. But the CNN article did offer an alternative perspective, right? Justin McCurry suggested that FIRE is achievable even for average college graduates, including those earning less than six figures.
He did, and his perspective underscores the importance of nuance within the FIRE movement. It's not just about retiring early, it's about understanding the relationship between time, money, and work. And while someone earning a lower income might have a longer path to traditional retirement, the principles of FIRE-conscious spending, investing wisely, and building multiple income streams can still be incredibly empowering.
It's about taking control of your finances, regardless of your income level, to create a life that aligns with your values. And who knows, maybe that involves early retirement, or maybe it simply means achieving a level of financial security that allows for more flexibility and choice.
Precisely. Now, another criticism that often arises in discussions about FIRE revolves around the 4% rule. You know, that guideline that suggests you can safely withdraw 4% of your retirement savings each year without running out of money?
All right, we touched on it earlier. It seems like a fairly straightforward concept.
It does, doesn't it?
But some argue it's too simplistic, that it doesn't account for all the variables that come with retirement, especially a retirement that spans decades.
Exactly. For starters, it's based on historical market performance, which, as we know, is not always indicative of future returns. The article even mentioned economists like Karsten Jesk advocating for a more conservative withdrawal rate, such as 3.5% or even lower, to mitigate the risk of outliving your savings.
Right. That makes sense after all. Planning for retirement is a bit like trying to predict the weather 30 years out. There's a certain level of uncertainty baked into the equation.
Absolutely. And that's why it's crucial to approach FIRE, and any financial strategy for that matter, with a healthy dose of realism. It's not about blindly following a formula, but rather about understanding the underlying principles and adapting them to your unique circumstances and risk tolerance.
So it's not just about crunching numbers and hitting a magic FIRE number, but also about considering the emotional and psychological aspects of early retirement. After all, work provides more than just a paycheck. It can offer a sense of purpose, community, and structure.
That's such an important point, and it's something that often gets overlooked in the pursuit of financial independence. Retiring early, while appealing in theory, can come with its own set of challenges if not approached thoughtfully. It's crucial to have a plan for how you'll fill your time, nurture your social connections, and find fulfillment outside of a traditional work setting.
It's about designing a life you don't need a vacation from, whether that involves pursuing passions, volunteering, or simply enjoying the freedom to set your own schedule. Well, this deep dive into the FIRE movement has certainly given us a lot to chew on. We've explored everything from the core principles of aggressive saving, the diverse paths to financial independence, to the criticisms surrounding accessibility and the complexities of early retirement.
And while the FIRE movement might not be a one-size-fits-all solution, its underlying principles of financial literacy, conscious spending, and mindful living are invaluable, regardless of your financial goals or life stage.
It's about understanding that time and money are interconnected, and how we choose to allocate those resources ultimately shapes the trajectory of our lives. If this deep dive has taught us anything, it's that true wealth isn't just about how much money you have in the bank, but how much freedom and fulfillment you have in your life.
Well said. And with that in mind, I'll leave you with this thought. If you had the financial freedom to design your ideal day, what would it look like? And how can you start taking small steps today to make that vision a reality?
That's something for us all to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of the FIRE movement. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those financial flames burning bright.